Ever wonder what motivates people to get plastic surgery? Did they regret it? What can we learn from the stories of plastic surgery patients? We're here to explore those questions and get some answers today with my guest Killian on the Plastic Surgeon Podcast. Hello, my friends. Welcome back, and thanks to our listeners for the amazing feedback. We have had so much fun so far and look forward to all of your insights and suggestions. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so we can bring you more amazing content. On the Plastic Surgeon Podcast, we listen to real plastic surgery stories of triumph and pain from real patients to further understand why they would risk their life under the knife. I'm Dr. Sajan, and today my guest is the amazing Killian. Killian, we're here to talk about your journey, how we came to know each other, the procedure you underwent, and how it affected you. So, Killian, what surgery did we do, my friend?
We did FTM top surgery, so that's specifically a double incision with free nipple grafts for me.
Okay, and why did you have that surgery, Killian?
I had it to kind of move forward with my transition.
Okay, and when we talk about transition, some of our guests know what gender confirmation surgery is, some of them don't. So I'll just share a little bit about that.
Of course.
So when we say transition, what we mean is Killian's gender assigned at birth was female, and Killian transitioned to male. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Killian, where are you from?
I am, a little bit from everywhere and nowhere. I kind of moved around a lot. Mm-hmm. The last place I lived at was Tennessee.
Oh, and how did you end up there?
So my mother had moved up there when I was in high school, and we just kind of followed with her. It's me and my two sisters.
Cool. And where were you born?
Germany, actually. I was an army brat.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's cool. How long did you live in Germany?
I think my mother said it was like a year and a half, something like that. It was towards the end of their term there.
Oh, okay. And your parents were together at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And then they ended up moving where after Germany?
South Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Big difference.
Is that where you went to school and all that?
Yep. Early on, middle school, we moved again to Central Texas, Fort Hood.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And where in your life, Killian, did you feel incongruent with your gender?
I kind of always felt that way. I knew that it just didn't seem right. And I know that a lot of times we kind of hear that and we don't know how to perceive it. But really I just didn't understand why my body didn't fit everything else that was around me.
Did you feel that way in kindergarten?
Yes. And it was kind of obvious when I look back at pictures and things like that, how different I felt.
Really? And what was the first sense that you can remember that made you feel incongruent with your gender?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it was even probably around kindergarten, if not maybe just like slightly earlier. So most of my cousins at the time that I was around were all boys, and I wanted to play with their toys. I wanted to play with their game systems, their Hot Wheels. They even gave me, like a setup of Hot Wheels. And I was told that I wasn't allowed to play with them.
Who told you that?
My mother.
Why do you think she said that?
I think because she was worried about the looks that she was probably getting. I didn't want to play with Barbies. I didn't want to, have play makeup. None of that really, caught my attention. It was the toy stores and Hot Wheels and things like that.
Wow. And so when you were with your cousins and friends, you would go towards these more, people would call quote-unquote male toys, if you will.
Right.
And how did she try to change that?
It was just little things. She would, when we'd go shopping, if I would pick something, she would be like, well, what about this? This might be better. And then lean me over into the girls section.
Oh, I see. So when you were at the stores, your mom would try to steer you towards other toys. And how did you respond to that as a child? Were you getting what was happening?
I don't think so. I think when I look back, I'm able to be like, oh, okay, that made her uncomfortable or, whatever it may have been. But for me, I think I was just more upset because I didn't understand.
And did you start playing with these more dolls and quote-unquote female toys?
I did, but only because I felt like I had to.
Did you start acting up or misbehaving because of this?
I think I did a few times, but I kind of quit after a little while just because it didn't seem like it helped any.
And when you had these initial feelings, what kept going through you as you were in elementary school?
I think I began to like ignore it or try to ignore it, but still wanted to, play tag football or climb things, just kind of do all the extra things that the little girls weren't doing.
Were most of your friends boys or girls?
Boys for a little bit there.
When did you start looking more into it and start realizing things may not be congruent more?
So I started looking into it, I think I was closer to like 18 or 19 or so. It was much, much later that I started realizing like, no, there's got to be a way to make myself feel more comfortable because I'm not. And I started looking at different like surgeries, like I didn't want my chest. So I was like, well, how can I fix that? And that's when I started realizing there was people that felt the same way.
And between K-5 and high school, or 18, what else made you feel incongruent? Were there other experiences or moments you had?
I think it just kind of fell in the same realm of not being able to do certain sports or not being able to dress how I wanted. My mother wanted dresses and skirts, and I didn't want any of that. And anytime there was something formal, I wanted some sort of a tux, and that wasn't going to work.
Yeah. Did you talk to anybody about this?
Just some of my friends knew, and they were just kind of they were kind of understanding, but I think that it kind of made them question things a little bit. But at the time, my friend group didn't really understand, I don't think, what transgender was, and so I just fell under the category of being a lesbian.
When were you labeled that, or did you have that category assigned to you that you can remember?
Probably freshman year in high school is the earliest that I remember it. It might have been a little sooner.
Yeah. And why did people categorize you as a lesbian?
Just because I liked girls. There was a lot of different things that I liked that a lot of the boys in the area liked as well.
Did other people make fun of you because of this?
A lot of people didn't talk to me. But I don't know if it was that or if maybe I was just different in their eyes.
Were you involved in any sports or high school activities?
I was not allowed in any sports once I hit high school, but I was in band.
Why weren't you allowed in sports?
I never got an answer.
Did your mom say no?
Yeah.
I see. What did you play in band?
I played flute early on and then moved into percussion and drumline.
Oh, cool. Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. Drumline was my favorite.
Yeah, why?
Just because I was able to kind of focus all of my energy that I felt that was pent up, and I was putting it out there, but I was putting it out there positively, and I was able to make an impact on people, especially when we did competitions and people in the stands would stand up and clap.
That's cool.
Yeah.
During freshman year, did you ever have a boyfriend, or high school, did you have a boyfriend or girlfriend?
I had a couple of boyfriends. I considered them more of my beards. But I did have one girlfriend for quite a while there. It was about a year and a half or so.
Did any of your family members know about that girlfriend?
My younger sister did, just briefly, and then when my mother found out, it didn't go very well.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
How did you find, this was in North Texas, I'm assuming?
It's central. Actually, it was in Central Tennessee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Southern Belt, I would stereotype it as more conservative.
Yes, very.
How did you find your girlfriend?
High school.
And were people identifying her similar to you as a lesbian, or how did you both come together?
She just kind of appeared one day. She was just new at the school. She had moved from out of state and caught my attention, and I looked like a total doofus talking to her for the first time.
Yeah. How did you do it?
I literally looked at her and I was like, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I put out my hand and I shook her hand and I was like, okay, bye. And just like ran away.
And then how did you follow that up?
Eventually I had a class with her, and so I was able to kind of take that time and get to know her.
How did you start the conversation?
I don't even remember at this point.
When did you come to, or you or both of you come to the understanding that, I'm just going to use lesbian because that's that's the sort of time period you're talking about in your life. How did you both understand that you may have had an affinity towards each other that's more than friendship?
I'm not really sure. I think that we understood that there was like an intensity there, and we were very, very comfortable around each other, but we didn't question it like everybody else around us was.
And was there a time period when she formally became your girlfriend?
Yeah, I think it was maybe a month after we started getting to know each other or so.
Right. And sometimes I remember in high school when people started dating, they would be like, oh, official, you're my girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. Did you all make it official like that, or it was never stated?
I don't think it was ever stated. We all just kind of knew and just kind of let it take its own course.
What would you say the transition is from friendship to girlfriend in that situation?
That is a really good question. I don't know. I think for me, the high school thing was like the first kiss vibe, when you just kind of lean into that intense feeling and are willing to be comfortable with it.
Do you mind sharing with us how that happened?
I don't know if I entirely remember. I remember being at her house, so I didn't bring friends over very often just because I know how my mother felt about those things.
Yeah.
But I remember being at her house in her room when we had our first kiss. And it was, I know that everybody says, oh, fireworks, but it was like that kind of display that it felt like. It really does.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were a freshman at this time?
Yes.
And how long did that relate? How long were both of you together?
I want to say it was about a year and a half.
And what led to change?
A good portion of it was my mother.
Oh, I see. Did your mom contact her parents or something like that, or?
I don't... Actually, I do remember it was because her mother contacted my mother because I left a hickey on her neck.
And then what happened?
Then I wasn't allowed to leave my room. I was only allowed to go to school outside of like leaving my room. After that, it was only like dinners and stuff. So I wasn't allowed to leave my room and or the house after that.
What did your dad say about this?
So my dad wasn't around. They had divorced in the early stages of my childhood.
Sure.
And so my stepfather at the time just kind of went with it. Yeah.
Did your siblings say anything or ask you what was going on?
The middle sister that I have, she asked, and then once she realized, okay, this didn't go well, she kind of left it alone because I was going through pretty much a heart, like a broken heart at that point because I wasn't able to see my girlfriend.
Were you able to talk on the phone?
Nope.
And did you have a computer in your room or anything?
No, it wasn't allowed that either.
This is cold turkey.
Yep.
Goodness. You saw her at school a little bit, I'm assuming? Yeah. But that was it. How long were you grounded for?
Until I moved schools, which was almost probably close to a year later or so.
So your mom's plan worked, essentially.
Yep, she won that one.
Yeah. And why did you end up moving after a year?
She decided that we needed to move across town to a different place. She had met a new guy, and she just kind of wanted to, I guess, move forward with that.
Okay, that makes sense. High school kept going. Did you have more girlfriends, or were you just staying to yourself during the rest of it?
Pretty much stayed to myself for the rest of it. I did have those occasional beards, but that was about it.
Do you think that initial experience put some fear in you?
Yeah, it definitely did. I felt like I couldn't be myself. So if I did want to try to explore anything in general, I felt like I couldn't do it.
Were you ever hit, or did you face any other struggles in the process?
My mother wasn't the best caretaker. I'll put it that way.
Okay, understood. You got through high school. Senior year, you said you started looking into it more. Is that right?
A little bit after, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you go to college?
I did briefly. I honestly wasn't prepared for it.
Where did you go to college?
I went to MTSU, so that's Middle Tennessee State University.
Okay. Is that where you started researching gender more?
Yes, yeah.
And what did you start researching?
Kind of just wanting to remove my chest, really, is what I was looking for. I actually had a communications class where it was a little group that did a project on, I can't remember the name of it, but it's when cis males have a large amount of breast tissue that sometimes doesn't just leave.
Gynecomastia.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And so he did a report on that, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Can I use that same idea here? Mm-hmm. Even though, it didn't entirely fit at the time, that's when I started looking.
Wow. And before this, had you thought, surgery is often thought of, but before that, people will go through hormones and other things. Did that come up at all, or no? Were you straight towards, I don't want my chest?
At the time, I was straight towards, I don't want my chest. Later on, I would say a few years later, then is when I was like, oh, okay, this connects. So if I can change my appearance as well in a different way, why not? Like, that would make me ultimately more comfortable.
Why did you not want your chest?
I felt like it was kind of an icky part of me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And a lot of people start binding when they start having those feelings. And can you tell us what binding is?
So people do it in different ways, and I'd like to note that this first way is definitely not something that should be done in general. Some people use ace bandages to try to bind. The problem with that is you can put it too tight, you can actually hurt your rib cage depending on how many layers you put on, things like that. Other options are actually, if available, are binders in order to do that, but you could have a problem with that if you get one that's too small as well.
Did you ever bind?
I did.
When were you binding?
So my first experience with binding was in high school. My girlfriend at the time would bring clothes for me and ace bandage, and then I would change at school, and then before I went home I would change again and then have a different outfit when I went home.
And how did you figure out binding was a thing in high school?
She actually brought it up. She said that one of her previous partners had done that before and they were really happy with it, and when I tried it, it alleviated a lot of that feeling that I had, or I just disliked my chest.
And did you bind in college too?
I didn't until a little bit after.
Okay. What were you studying at the time?
At the time I was studying psychology, and as well as music. I wanted to try to combine those things for people.
Wow, that's cool. When did you learn transgender was a thing, that's something you may identify with?
That was a little bit later. I would say maybe like a year or two after that. It came up when I was looking for additional surgeries as well as top surgery. And then I started realizing that there was people in the bigger city that was north of me that actually had a group that they would meet every month or two to kind of talk to each other and feel comfortable in their space.
And what kind of group was this?
It was a transgender allied group.
Did you join that group?
I did not. I was too nervous.
Were you living at home during this time?
No, I was actually, this was in between my time frame of homelessness and then finding stability. So I was kind of in a weird spot.
How did you end up in homelessness?
The first time was because of a mix of my mother and the people that I was living with at the time. I had left my mother's almost immediately when I turned 18. I think it was literally the day of my birthday. I picked up all my stuff and I left.
Why did you leave?
I couldn't handle it anymore, and I don't think that staying would have helped me any, and I still absolutely agree with my decision.
And was gender the main reason you left?
Between that and her religious views on the LGBTQ community.
Where did you go?
So I went to a friend's house. That lasted for a while. I started college, and when I was set to go back, it was that like next summer, I think. It kind of went sour because her mother found out that I was in that group, LGBTQ group.
How did she find out?
I think her nephew actually told her because he had found out that me and my friend at the time were not dating, we weren't exclusive or anything like that, but we were talking to each other.
How were you paying for stuff at 18?
I was doing a little bit of more of the odd jobs kind of thing. And also like when I was in college, we had a meal card, depending on like how you came into college.
How did you pay for college?
I actually went through state funding, so like scholarships as well.
Oh, so you applied and did all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's cool. So did you have to take out loans?
I did briefly, but that was simply because I was actually on probation because of a few classes that I couldn't handle.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm.
So the state funding and scholarships required you to maintain a GPA or something like that?
Yes.
Oh, cool. And then how long were you at your friend's place?
So I finished high school there, so probably at minimum like the 6 to 8 months or so, and then I moved into a dorm, and in the summer I went back. So probably close to a year collectively.
Did your mom try to stop you from leaving?
Eventually, yes. She actually called the cops and said that I ran away, but because I was 18, they couldn't do anything about it.
Wow. Were you in touch with her at all or no?
No, I didn't speak with her for 4 or 5 years, actually.
Was she trying to reach out to you?
Yes and no. I think it was more to keep tabs, but I don't think that it was actually to have a relationship.
Did you have a cell phone or something to stay in touch?
I surprisingly didn't until probably going into college, and then no one really had my number, so no one called me.
What about your siblings?
Nope, I didn't have contact with them. My mother felt like my life choices did not align with God's view of how things should be.
Did she try to have a religious person try to talk to you or go do any therapy with you?
She did have a couple of religious people try to come up to me and talk to me, and whenever they would see me in like the store or something, they just kind of follow me around and be like, hey, your mom's like looking for you, or do you want to come to church, and they would try to just kind of reel me in, but it didn't work.
Wow. And then you were in the dorms back with your friends. Where did life go from there?
It was strange because there's a lot more freedom, so I didn't know what to do with it. And there was a lot of more freedom in different layers. So you talk about like schooling, you're able to go to your class or not go to your class. I would suggest going to your class, just a thought.
Yeah.
And then in your, normal life, if you had a parent that was like mine, now I have freedom to go out to parties or, go hang out with my friends, do random stuff, do things like that. And I didn't kind of know what to do with myself because it was a very, very overwhelming stage in my life.
Wow. When did you start presenting more male?
So it was after I had left to go to the Navy and I came back.
You went to the Navy?
Yes.
When
yes.
did you go to the Navy?
So shortly after leaving college.
Did you finish college?
I did not. I actually, after I hit probation and I took out another loan to try to upkeep things and still keep going, I found myself more stressed out and more overwhelmed.
Okay.
So eventually it came down to trying to find a way into the workforce and still be independent, which I didn't really know how to do. So it was, I would say, 2 years after high school, roughly.
And what did you do in the Navy?
So I was set to go into IT. And I had a pretty lengthy contract. I didn't get to fulfill my contract.
What does that mean?
So I ended up having to leave due to like a medical issue. So I was discharged.
Oh, got it. And when you signed up for the Navy, did you have to do like, I don't know much about that, but did you have to go through like basic training and stuff like that?
Yep. Depending on what branch you go into, it's 6 to 12 weeks.
How was that?
Honestly, and I'm probably one of the few that will ever say it, it was the most entertaining, fun situation that I had ever been in.
I know I see things on TV where you have to wake up at 4 and like exercise, and then you're up 16, 18 hours a day, and it's grueling. You didn't go through that?
It was grueling, but it didn't faze me the way it did others. I think that it was partially because I was an Army brat, and then some built-in trauma on top of that. I kind of it didn't really change my view of things.
Okay. Yeah, so you survived that without much issue. And then, do you mind sharing what led to your discharge?
So I think I'll just keep that to myself.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, I understand. How long were you in the Navy?
Not long enough. I think if I would have fulfilled my contract, I would have been a little bit more set. But I think overall, I think it was a good choice to leave at that time and not further cause any issues.
Okay. Was it tough being gender nonconforming, or it wasn't a thing there?
Wasn't a thing. I didn't take the time to think about it.
Okay. You were too busy with stuff.
Yeah.
And when you left the Navy, where did you go?
So I ended up going back to Middle Tennessee. Not the greatest of choices, but I didn't really have anywhere to go.
And who were you staying with at this point?
So I stayed with a separate friend from the original friend. And that was pretty cool. But I realized very quickly that I still needed to find my own way.
And what was next after that?
I just kind of started just taking jobs, even if there were odd jobs. I think at one point I had 3 jobs stacked on top of each other and trying to juggle that to stay afloat.
And were you presenting male at this time? Were you dressing that way?
No. So because I was in the time period of like couch hopping and potential homelessness, I just kind of put that to the wayside. And it was really, really unfortunate because I wasn't able to also engage with other people that could have helped me be more comfortable with myself at the time.
When were you more comfortable to present as your gender identity?
I think it was probably, I would say close to a year or 2 after that.
Okay. And where were you in life at this point?
I was doing a serving job. I was really awkward. I finally found a place that I could kind of hang out and stay and be comfortable. And it was through a coworker.
Okay, this was someone else's place that you were staying at?
Yep.
And were you paying these people some rent or some money?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
And how did that come about? I mean, how did you feel more comfortable there?
No one really bothered me. It was just me and then one other person, and I actually ended up living in their dining room. We'd set up curtains, and that's how we kind of made that division there.
Yeah. And did you start, what was the first thing you did to present more male?
I cut my hair.
How was that?
it was life-changing.
Did you do it yourself or have a friend do it? Go to a shop?
We went to a shop, so I was like, hey, I'm thinking about cutting my hair, but I don't know how I feel about it. This is why. And my friend was like, oh, okay, well, you know what? Let's just go do it. And I kind of just stared because I wasn't sure if they were just being like, let's go pick a time or let's go do it now. And they're like, all right, no, let's get in the car. Let's go. And we went straight to like a Supercuts, I think it was, and got a nice little beaver hairdo.
And then what happened?
After that, then I started finding clothes that were more aligned to how I felt.
When did you start thinking about hormones?
It was shortly after, so I actually had a coworker that started noticing and picking up on things that I was doing, and they had a close friend of theirs that had actually just gotten top surgery.
Really?
Yeah.
This was in Tennessee?
Yes.
And then what made you start hormones and get into that space?
So she had set up a kind of like a little meet and greet for the both of us, and him and I just sat down and talked, and I was like, no, this is how I feel, and I never understood how I could get to feeling more comfortable, and I also don't know what steps I even take. Little did I know at the time when that conversation had started that he was trans.
Oh, you thought he was just male assigned at birth?
Yeah.
Wow. And then he shared his story with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it honestly opened so many doors. He gave me resources. He helped me with my name change. He really was able to kind of propel me to the point where I can make those changes.
What was the first thing you did after the haircut?
After the haircut was finding a therapist or a counselor, because in Tennessee you actually have to have 1 to 2 years of therapy that could say that yes, they are transitioning from one way to the other in order to get a letter to get your hormones.
And you did that?
Yep.
And how did hormones feel?
Once they started actually like working, I would say like a few months in, and starting to hear my voice change and crack and starting to see the facial hair happen, is when I was like, okay, this is where I was supposed to be. And I kind of missed the train the first time.
Were you getting any discrimination or people being difficult with you during this?
Yes, so there was a period of androgyny there because, of course, when you first start getting facial hair, some people like to keep it. I felt like it wasn't enough for me, so I would just shave it and call it a day. Well, because I was in that androgynous period, people didn't know how to respond to me. So in the South, there's a lot of yes ma'am, yes sirs. There's that kind of mentality where you have to say respectfully one way or the other. And when people couldn't find one side or the other, they would get upset.
What would they do?
So I've had some people ask, well, are you a boy or a girl? And then just stare at me. And then if I just kind of want to leave the conversation, they'd be like, oh, so now you don't want to talk. And it would frustrate them, but it wasn't something I was also at the time willing to have those conversations yet, because I didn't know which way they were going to go.
And were these random people or people that were in your friend circle?
Random people. Anybody who was in my circle that didn't agree with it left.
How did these people run into you or even spark a conversation?
It could depend. I had one situation where I was at the deli counter in one of the stores just trying to get cold cuts.
Wow. So just doing normal stuff, people, intruding, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. How did hormones make you feel?
Outside of that, honestly, 10 times better.
What felt better?
Just being able to get through puberty the way that I understood it to be the first time around.
When did you leave Tennessee and come up to Seattle?
That was maybe, actually I think it was almost 2 years ago now.
How did that happen?
So my girlfriend got a opportunity to come up here through work, and we saw this as the perfect timing for us to take a chance and change things for the positive for both of us.
What made you feel Seattle was better?
So she had been up here maybe 2 to 3 times prior, just on visits.
Mm-hmm.
And she absolutely enjoyed it. She enjoyed how people kind of stay to themselves. No one really asks you questions. No one really bothers you. And it was more progressive in comparison to the South.
What kind of work did she do?
She is currently a store manager at a retail store.
They had a transfer available or something like
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yep, transfer and promotion.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys came up here. How was that?
Honestly, it was a culture shock. I understood that things were going to be a little bit different. People weren't going to bother me as much, but people overall, it feels like they are nicer, simply because they're not trying to pry into anything.
Yeah, I see that. You know, some people say they like that southern hospitality. Other people think it's a little bit more intrusive. I think here you have a balance, you know? A lot of people will talk to you if you want that. Mm-hmm. Others will just stay in their own lane, if you will.
Yeah.
But most people aren't going to give you their opinion unless you really elicit it.
Yes. I'm here for it.
When did you start thinking about top surgery when you were in Seattle?
So I actually started thinking about it prior. I knew that she was up for her promotion. It was just a matter of when. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and was like, okay, so these are the places that are going to be the option of where she might be able to go. What are we looking at for transgender care in all of these places?
And how did you hear about me in that?
I actually went through and did top surgeons for specifically trans males, and then narrowed it down from lists from Reddit and other websites.
And what made you want to come to me?
Specifically the way that the reviews were. So it's a lot more positive reviews, the most reviews, and when I went on your website, you actually had before and after photos.
Okay, some people didn't have that kind of stuff.
Correct.
And then you decide, did you go to a couple consults or just me?
Just yours.
Okay. How was that experience?
It was solid. I felt comfortable instantly when I got to meet you and have those conversations.
And when did you make the decision it's time for surgery?
Shortly after our consult, I believe.
And you came for the day. I know you were part of our docu-series, Patient. Mm-hmm. Some people may not want to share that much, but you were really open and kind. Why did you want to share your story?
I think that it's important for people to realize that we are people ourselves. I feel like especially in politics, we have a tendency to forget that certain demographics are still people that have feelings, who have stories behind them, and some of them have been through a lot. And I think that taking away from any possibility of them having a better life actually takes away from the environment around that everybody else has.
Makes sense. How did surgery go?
Surgery, I think, was a breeze. I don't remember a portion of a few days after. Mm-hmm. But I did have an allergic reaction during recovery. And even with that, I think that it was one of the best experiences for being my first surgery.
Was it easy to get a hold of me or the practice when you had some questions or concerns?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think my girlfriend had actually called in the middle of the night because of how bad my rash had gotten. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there was an immediate response.
Okay, good. How do you feel your surgery turned out?
Way, it exceeded my expectations. I was honestly even with the reviews, you always still have that worry that, okay, maybe I won't feel something here or there on my chest, or, there may be some other issues and complications, but it looks amazing.
Are you happy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm ready for spring so I can actually just start running around without my shirt off.
That's awesome. How was your experience with me in the practice?
Honestly, great. I think that you all, each and every one of you, had taken the time to make sure that I had all the information that I needed, that someone was always available to have any conversations if something was missed, things like that.
That's awesome. How is life going to be different now that you've had top surgery?
I think it's going to be, of course, better, but I think that it's going to give me kind of a new, I guess, lease on life. I won't feel as uncomfortable when talking to people. I'll not have to worry so much that, oh, well, what if my chest is a little obvious today, kind of thing. And just kind of float.
When you have surgery, you really, I think you have to have a strong trust and some kind of connection with the doctor. Aside from online stuff and things that you saw and other stories that you read on other forums, what made you feel like you could trust me?
I feel like it was one of our, I think it was maybe the first or second interaction that we had. We talked about kind of the differences in different surgeries and what expectations were. I feel like sometimes when you go in and you have doctors, they're willing to just go through XYZ. This is the procedure. This is what I'm going to do. Okay, bye. And that's the ending of that conversation. But you were willing to answer all those questions and ensure that we understood exactly what the process was going to be.
One of my key goals when I do surgery, Killian, and I hope you felt this, it sounds like you did, is I want to create the best, most unique and custom look for you, right? Now, top surgery has certain things that are standard. There are a lot of things that aren't standard. Incision shape, incision style, incision orientation, chest shape, chest contour, nipple position, nipple orientation, nipple size. So many of these variables. So one of my key goals when I meet people is I try to understand, what does this person want? Number one. Number two, is it something I can do? And then the third question is, how are we going to get there if possible? And that's sort of my key goal. And it means a lot to me that it seems like that message was conveyed to you.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So what's next in life, Killian?
Eventually, I kind of want to go back to school. And thinking about maybe going back into psychology, trying to help the community that I came from and give them some opportunity to understand who they are.
That's cool. And what kind of work are you doing right now?
Currently, I am a manager at a pizza place.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is it in the Seattle area?
No, it is not. It's a little bit further out.
Okay, cool. You like it?
I like it a lot. I think that it feeds into my need to help people and to have those, just general conversations. But I don't think that it fulfills my want to help a community.
Do you feel the discrimination is less here than what you felt in Tennessee?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's still going to be some instances where discrimination is going to happen. That doesn't just disappear. But overall, it's a much better experience than I was having before, and I'm much happier for it.
That's awesome. Killian, thank you so much for being my guest today. Your story of triumph, struggle, determination, uncertainty shed so much light on how everybody's journey is unique. And there's no one path that fits all, right? We all live in different styles and different ways, and your story really highlights that. It's amazing. I have learned a lot from your ordeal, and it will teach our listeners on what to expect as they go on their own journeys. I appreciate your time. I'm honored to have you as my patient, Killian, and I would even say my friend. Thanks for listening to the Plastic Surgeon Podcast. Please rate us, review us on Apple Podcasts to get more great content. For my live surgeries, Tune in on Instagram at realdrseattle. See you next time. Bam.